This ocean scene was modeled, rendered, and animated all within formz. Each object represents a different modeling or animation feature, and there is a separate demo movie for each item. If we want to create a more detailed type column, as you can see here, we can create a variety of different types of capitals for the column. Here's a Corinthian, here's a Ionic, and we can also create a Doric style capital using a variety of different tools and features in formz. So let's see how these were done. Okay, so here's all three of the capitals already modeled for us, and let's go ahead and begin with the Doric style first. How that was created is we started off with just a 2D profile, and then using the revolve tool we revolved that around a center line. You can make it faceted or smooth if we want. And for the top, I just drew a 2D rectangle, extruded that out, and then I'll simply move the face and reshape that to the desired dimensions that I want. And then we'll sort of round the edges using the round tool, give it the radius that we want. And now for the Corinthian column, we pretty much started off using the same method. Once again, we drew a 2D profile for the center section, and then using the revolve tool, we simply revolve that around a center line. For the ornamental leaves that are all around the outside, there's a couple of different ways that these were done. One was to do a sweep operation. Here we have one source and one path. We can do an axial sweep, and you can see that the source shape follows wherever the path goes. And I can also scale that source as it sweeps along that path. For one of the other ornamental leaves, we did a two-source sweep. So here we can take two different cross sections and sweep that along a single path. You can see how it easily morphs from one cross section into the other as it follows that path. Now for the scrolls on top, we did a two-path sweep. So here we have two different paths. You're probably asking, well, how to make that nice little spiral path? Well, there's a formula tool in formz for creating formula curves. So we can set it to a spiral pattern, type in the numbers that you want to create a true mathematical spiral. You can use any of the spline drawing tools to create other spline curves, and then you can see you can actually attach and merge those different curves together to make one continuous path like we have here. And then using the two-path sweep option, we'll have one cross-section that follows both paths at the same time. And as those paths converge and separate, it scales its source shape in and out to follow both. Now for the abacus on top, we'll take one single profile and have that sweep along the outside boundary, and the boundary sweep will automatically fill in or cap off the end, so it's a continuous solid object. And just like any of the other objects that we created here, you can see that you can go back and edit those afterwards to reshape that geometry. Now there's a little star that goes into the top section there, and instead of trying to draw that as one continuous profile, I just created multiple 2D profiles. Here's some rectangles and spline curves, and I simply Boolean union all those together to create one single profile. And then I can take that profile and extrude that out into a 3D solid object. And then I simply take that solid object and move it into position where I want it. Alright, there's one more leaf that we need to create. And if I zoom in here, you can see I started off with a series of 2D cross sections. And I'll simply grab all those lines that we have there and do a NURBS loft. So it lofts a nice smooth NURBS surface through all those 2D profiles. And we need to curve this a little bit. So maybe what we'll do is use the radial bend tool, and by grabbing hold of that object, we can bend it in any direction that we need. We can also type in a value if we want. So we bend it back a little bit, and we can also bend it again. And resizing the deformation box, we can resize the area that is affected by that particular deformation tool. Now one thing that's nice about the deformations is they are controlled parameters, so I can right click on the object, and you can see at a later date I can always go in and edit any of these deformation values that I gave to the object. We can even turn some of the deformations off. We can type in different values. For example, let's type in maybe 100 and 80 degrees for the other bend angle, and you can see that we can update and modify any of those deformation parameters. And now it's just a matter of taking these different objects, and we can multi-copy and place multiple copies around to create the final Corinthian column as we see here. Next, let's create the Ionic capital. Just as we did with the other two capitals, we can create a 2D profile and revolve that. We can do it faceted or smooth. And for the scroll on top, we're going to do a similar thing that we did with the previous Corinthian capital. We are going to create two sets of paths. And we have a cross section now which will actually sweep along both of those paths. And so there's half of the scroll on top by sweeping that 2D profile along both those paths there. And to create the other half, what I'm going to do is simply mirror and copy the object right across the center. And then I can take these two pieces and using the Boolean union tool, I can union the two pieces together to create one single solid scroll. Move that into position. Next, I need to create a little bit of curvature. It's sort of straight. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the deformation tool again. This time we're going to do a bulge operation. And when I click on the object, you can see that I can push and pull on that deformation box to sort of bulge that in or out in any direction that I want. So we can curve in the front a little bit like that. And then we can go ahead and change the orientation so that now we can maybe bulge the ends in just a little bit also. All right, the last thing we need to do is put a little spherical ball at the end of the scroll there. So I'll just use a 2-point sphere, and using the snap tool I can snap right to the existing geometry to make sure that those spheres match right on the end of the scroll. And so here we have our final different order columns that were all modeled and rendered in formz, representing the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian style capitals, showing off a variety of different modeling tools in formz for some of the more organic type of modeling features that are available in the program.